I hope that these poems reflect the progression that I mentioned earlier. And after I read a few here, for comparison purposes, I'd like to show you some new stuff that I've written. Maybe you'll see a shift. And some of these things, as Rob said, some are depressing, but they reflect where my head was at a specific time. So, with that having said,
Where are we starting?
I'm going to start on page 7. This one is entitled December 3rd, 2007. It's 8 degrees and the wind moans at the bars trying to get in. The guy below me tosses and moans in his sleep trying to get out. Because sleep is generally the only escape you have. And there are times when I've awakened in the morning and been disappointed. And again, because there's a certain amount of cynicism that comes with being in prison, and it's a place where the weak and the lame get eaten alive. So you have to maintain a certain mindset that you won't let yourself be one of the victims. This one is this is page 14, Under the Body Tree. The book promised a mind as calm as the moon shining on a tranquil lake. So I followed the instructions on posture and breathing until I could see a white light. But I should have read a little more before I began, because the next chapter talked about the real me beneath the conscious mind, a place where I could be more loving and compassionate and forgiving, where I would learn to ignore insults and even assaults by my fellow travelers, which naturally made me toss the book back on the shelf where I got it before I learned to love and forget all the people who persist in being a pain in my ass.
Might apply elsewhere.
Yeah, I'm finding that out, oddly enough. This one is, well, it's entitled Dead. On the day they find out I'm dead, people will hate me. People who hate me will celebrate. But I hope the people who love me will think about better days before I went to prison and died there. And I hope, too, that the ones mourning outnumber the ones laughing. Maybe they'll read something I wrote, something that made them laugh or cry. Maybe they'll call Susan and tell her how sorry they were, that we never had the life we planned. She'll wait until they hang up before crying, and maybe calling me every worthless bastard in the book for leaving her like that, just as her book came out and she got famous and the world was ours. This one, there is a dominance hierarchy in prison, a pecking order, if you will, with certain classes of criminal occupying the higher strata and certain classes occupying lower, as this will indicate. A small case of schadenfreude. At 5:30 in the morning, I watched Randy yodel in the toilet, then stagger back to his cell without flushing. Maybe he got sick thinking about the little girl he raped, or maybe the ghost of all the people he told on came back to haunt him. Then I shook my head. His conscience has been on life support from birth, so he must be dope sick again. I looked at his belly spilling over his underwear and a spindly leg struggling to handle the load, and I loved it. I should be a bigger and better person. I should be able to find that thread that unites us in our common humanity, but not this morning, not with him. Maybe tomorrow I'll get in touch with my better angels. Maybe I'll say a prayer for him instead of celebrating his pain. Maybe I'll wake up on the Côte d'Azur with my wife in a string bikini beside me. Again, that's that mindset that you have to cultivate. And it's not pretty. It really isn't. This one is called Understanding Victor Hussein. This was a man who wrote and did a whole lot to bring the tragedy of prison into the public venue. And he's doing a life sentence in Pennsylvania, and he had a chance for commutation, and the commutation board will not even hear his application. He subsequently committed suicide. After, well,
Give the page. Give the
yes, I'm sorry. This is page 32. Understanding Victor Hussein. Susan wrote her book because no one knew, and then she flew to London to present a paper because no one listened, which was published in a journal that no one read, after the Supreme Court said the states could start killing people again because no one cared. Victor saved them the trouble and killed himself because 26 years was enough. And there are people who do that, who just simply reach a point where they say, I'm not going to do this anymore. You know, I've had it. And again, the prison mindset demands, especially if you're in a violent prison, that you cease caring about anything except your own survival. And even to a certain extent, death becomes meaningless to you because it's around you all the time. You see it, you're confronted with it, you see people killed violently, and you're in prison with men who think violently, that's the only means to an end. This is on page 37, Manifest Destiny. Death beckons most from a polar landscape, cold and dark, where guttering candles cry over a grief-crusted coffin. But he waves to me from Aruba, drink in hand, warm breeze in his face, and a 48-footer parked at the key. It's almost welcome, like Victor Hussein. You know, not the physical torture, but prison now, although the supermax prisons and that sort of thing, the sensory deprivation, is physical torture, but it's more a mind trip now. This is what they attack now, as opposed to your body. Yeah, they will still beat you, they will still do things to you in a physical manner, but it's more of a mind trip now than it ever was before. And then you reach a point, amnesiac, this is page 39. When you finish the first 10, you still want the things you see on TV, the cars, the jewelry, and the girls, mostly the girls. By the time you finish 20, you've learned that you can live without the cars, the jewelry, and the girls, mostly the girls. At the end of 30, you can't remember why you wanted the cars, the jewelry, or the girls, mostly the girls, and you don't care. That's what prison does. It teaches you what you can live without. And which can be beneficial, because if you don't have what I consider the extraneous things, you're no longer materialistic, because those things cease to be important to you in prison. This is on page 49, a badder bladder. When I was 20, an all-nighter meant gallons of coffee and cramming for midterms and finals. Now that I'm 60, an all-nighter means I don't have to get up to go to the bathroom. So there is, you can find some humor in these places. And again, as the closer you get to release, assuming that you're capable of getting out, this is where your mind goes. This was called Morning Run. Bending on the edge of our bed, I tighten the laces 30 minutes before the sun. You roll toward me and prop up on one elbow, your other hand on my back. You ask if I have to go. When I turn, you move, and a sheet falls away easily. Bending on the edge of our bed, I loosen the laces 28 minutes before the sun. Again, this next one I'm about to read reflects the predatory nature of what goes on inside. This is on page 78. Inside the outside. While you pile more wood on the fire and move closer to its warmth, out here beyond your circle of light in the cold and dark, I can smell your food and hear your songs. I watch your children play. All your touching and feeling, your doing. You forget that I'm here, always here, and you trust the fire to keep you safe, but it destroys your night vision, which means you can't see me, even though I can see you from my darkness, while I wait for the rain that will put out your fire and teach you about the fertile shadows where we both will then live. Scary stuff sometimes.
That is scary.
Scary stuff. Now, as the point of contrast, I'd like to offer just a couple here that reflect a different mindset. I was walking to work one day. I live in New Hampshire, and it's a very old part of the country. And the old cemeteries there, I enjoy looking at the gravestones and reading the inscriptions and marveling at the 17th and 18th century inscriptions. And this poem was prompted by one. And because my education has been increased largely. A weathered marker in the Old North Cemetery pays tribute to Colonel Elijah Wolfe, graduate of Harvard College and a prominent member of the commission to determine the border between New Hampshire and Massachusetts, a genial and lovable man, a gallant and inspiring leader, an able and resourceful citizen who served his country with honor for many years. Etched on an adjacent, smaller marker is a shorter inventory. Sarah, his wife. As if being his wife justified her place beside him, like his dog, his rifle, or his favorite chair. This is called Subterranean. And, well, it should be self-explanatory. I passed the busker at the alley's entrance, acoustic guitar picking out some early Dylan. Two women stood around a sign propped against a hopeful upturned cap. Tips are appreciated. I dropped in some change and got a nod and part of a smile. Maybe it was the money, or maybe it was the dirty shirt and jeans and scuffed boots I was wearing, marking me as a kindred spirit. Street survivors are an extended family of sorts, occasionally preying on each other, but frequently closing ranks against outsiders. Most carry their property in backpacks or plastic bags, the more affluent pushing stolen laundry carts, or stolen grocery carts. Traveling in pairs or in groups, always with cigarettes and a cell phone, they boldly meet the gaze of accomplices, but constantly avert their eyes when meeting someone from that other world of scented soap and hot showers, good food and dry beds, clean clothes and cleaner nails. They would not have looked at me an hour later, nor I at them. And one more, oh no, two more, I'm sorry. You have to endure two more. This didn't make the book, but this was also written in prison. It's called Pensive at 4 a.m. No memories comfort me, only the versions and variations of other invented lives. But living in someone else's memory allows me to choose which past I prefer, to be nobody I ever was, to dream of something other than the unremitting, unforgiving present, where my verbs have neither past nor future tense, and I am reduced to a chalk outline on the sidewalk that marks the place where my real self died. Because in prison, I was always astonished to hear guys divulging details about their personal lives. And you don't do that because it's dangerous. I've known guys, I've got a friend now who has known me since 1988, I guess. And we've done things, we've shared experiences and that sort of thing. He just got out as well. He still doesn't know where I was born, where I lived, where I went to school. He doesn't know anything important about me. He does not. That's not the type of information you divulge. And I've often mentioned to Susan how we will be out in a public place and I will hear people casual acquaintances, somebody next to you on the metro. You know, I've got this many daughters, my son goes to school here, I'm going to see my grandchildren, and I'm thinking, are you people crazy? But again, that's the prison mindset. Because as Susan often points out, that's what being social is. You know, nobody's working you trying to pry information out of you so they can go rob your house while you're gone. But this is the stuff that that sticks with you. And of course, you know, she'll say, honey, that's not it. And when she, you're right. Yeah. You're right. And then we can both laugh. Yeah, I can laugh about it. Because some of the things you come out of prison, you know you bring with you. You've got certain habits. Some you don't. I could tell stories like this all day long, but I'll just mention one. The first time we went out to eat, and we sat in a booth. The server put us in a booth. Susan sits in the middle of the booth. I'm right on the edge. I'm not getting caught in that booth. No way. Am I sitting all the way in that booth, man? Bad things can happen if you get trapped inside a booth. She told me. I had no idea what I was doing. Had no idea. She said, you know, you can move this way. I thought, yeah. She brought a meal out when I made medium custody. And the facility was outside the prison walls, and visitors could bring food. She brought a great meal, set it out in front of me. It was wonderful, it smelled good. In all seriousness, I looked at her and I said, do you want to eat first or talk? She said, we can do both. Because in prison, meals are not social events. It's just fuel. It's like a pit stop in a race. You're there, you're not there to talk. You're there to get it in you. You got a guy in a uniform behind you saying, finish up. So I had no idea that you could eat and talk at the same time. It never had occurred to me. You put food in front of me, and I'm going to take about 3 minutes with it. And that's it, and then I'm out of there. So this is something that I had no idea I was bringing with me. And even after, well, I've only been out, 11 months now, I still eat too fast. I mean, we'll sit across from each other on a table, and and I'll catch myself, and I said, look, I'm doing it again. And she, of course, she's always just as sweet as me. I said, yes, you're doing it. Anyway, one more. And this is, again, the death experience becomes immaterial, irrelevant in prison. This one's called Missed Opportunity. The pain began while I drank green tea in front of a dawning window, as I listened to stories about oily pelicans, extinct lizards, and another suicide bomber. The LDL python wrapped its coils around my unsuspecting chest and began to squeeze. My heart bumped and thumped its constricted rhythm, pushing a contrapuntal tingle down to my fingers until a quiet curiosity displaced the early fear. I sat back and watched a southbound jet etch a pink contrail into a passive sky, and smiled to think that I too might be on the way to somewhere else.